Hello, and thank you for watching this regional forecast for the Corn Belt. I'm Andrew Pritchard, Senior Meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. We'll start with a look at temperatures here on Friday morning. Warm and muggy from the southern plains all the way into the central plains. Meanwhile, we've got some cooler and less humid air moving through the Great Lakes and into the Corn Belt, but the heat will once again be expanding, at least temporarily, as we head deeper into the weekend into early next week. As we take a look at the satellite picture here, pretty quiet with respect to the last couple of weeks across the central U.S. We had a cluster of thunderstorms across portions of Nebraska and Kansas, kind of along the border there, that faded as we headed through the overnight. Other thunderstorms across the northern plains into the Canadian Prairie that are ongoing this morning, but otherwise across the Corn Belt, a really quiet morning, a really beautiful morning, especially as you head off towards the east and enjoy some of that sunshine with some of the cooler and less humid temperatures. So again, a look at the radar picture. The only cluster of storms ongoing right now is really faded as it moved out of the northern plains, out of the northern portion of the Corn Belt into the Canadian Prairie. Our little cluster here across Nebraska and Kansas has faded as we've headed into the early morning hours. Now, as we look at the severe weather forecast over the next 3 days, we've got today, here's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We will see those thunderstorms reignite as we head through the late afternoon and evening hours across parts of the northern and central plains. A slight risk in place from Nebraska into North Dakota and far northwest Minnesota. As we head into the day tomorrow, a marginal risk then from the Dakotas east into the Great Lakes, and then that risk sinks off to the south as we head into Sunday from parts of the central plains into the Great Lakes. This is all along a cold front that's going to be slowly making its way across the Corn Belt, across the Midwest, and kind of parking itself across portions of the Corn Belt as we head into the early part of next week. That'll be a focal point for some thunderstorm activity. Now, as we take a look at the hazards map here, we do have heat advisories, excessive heat warnings in place across parts of the northern plains and the upper Midwest. Again, as that ridge begins to expand and bring heat back into the Great Lakes, into the eastern Corn Belt. We can see what's happening here. Look at the jet stream. We're looking at 500 millibar height anomalies. We've got the ridge once again taking over across the Corn Belt, and again, that's going to have that heat once again moving into portions of the Great Lakes and the eastern Corn Belt where we're experiencing that cooler and less humid air today. But watch what happens as this trough begins to ride up and over the top of this ridge. We get almost like a little wave crashing here. We get this trough riding over that ridge, sinking down into the Great Lakes, such that by the time we get to the middle part of next week, this is just the transition over the next 5 to 7 days. Our ridge is now well off to the west. That's where the heat will then again be. We'll see cooler temperatures following this trough into portions of the Corn Belt. It's also going to bring back rain and thunderstorms across portions of the central plains. So a big transition here with that ridge sliding off to the west. We'll look what happens over the next 60 hours here with the high-resolution NAM model. This will take us through the severe weather threat Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This is what the model's got for us right around 7 p.m. this evening. Again, that front located right about here, we'll see those thunderstorms flaring up anywhere from Nebraska into North Dakota. The chance for some high winds, some large hail, maybe a tornado or two across this area. The thunderstorm activity should be rather disorganized here, so not talking about a huge tornado threat, probably more in the way of locally damaging winds with some of these Boeing clusters and some large hail, especially early in the thunderstorm's lifespan here over the evening. If we take it into the overnight, we'll see these thunderstorms continuing to ride over the ridge. You can kind of broadly see the flow here, the anticyclonic flow around that ridge across the central part of the country as I just kind of animate the thunderstorm activity. We'll take the drawings off, head back into Saturday afternoon. We'll have the front kind of hanging out across this region. That's where the marginal risk extends from the Great Lakes into the high plains. This is the look here about 7 p.m. on Saturday evening. Again, just a broken line of thunderstorms across that front, anywhere from the UP of Michigan across Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and all the way back into the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. We'll take this into Sunday now. This front's going to be somewhere in the very similar region here from this high plains all the way into the Great Lakes. And that's where, once again, as we get into Sunday afternoon and evening, we'll watch for thunderstorm activity to flare up. Crucial across this region as we talk about some increasing dryness across that region. So eyes to western Iowa, portions of Nebraska, into the central plains, especially as we get into Sunday and Monday. So let's take a look at total precipitation between now and midday on Sunday. This, again, raw data from the high-resolution NAM model, so not exactly how it's going to play out, but you can see the theme here. You can see the corridor along that frontal boundary. Let me draw it in a different color here, but from the central plains into the northern Great Lakes, this is where we'll slowly be watching that cold front making its progression over the next 2.5 days. Where is it going to be left out? Well, over the next couple of days until we get to Sunday, we'll be dry here from the southern plains into the central and eastern Corn Belt. You see maybe a couple of pop-up thunderstorms as you get into the eastern Corn Belt, but by and large, this corridor going to be dry as we head through now into Sunday afternoon and evening. Now we'll expand it, a little lower resolution, but with the European model, we'll take it quickly through the next few days. We've covered Friday, Saturday, and Sunday pretty well in depth, but our severe weather risk from Nebraska into North Dakota this afternoon and evening. As we head into Saturday afternoon and evening, we'll watch for thunderstorm activity from Colorado all the way to the UP of Michigan. Dry again as we talk about the southern plains into the eastern Corn Belt. Let's take the drawing off and head into Sunday afternoon. Again, we'll see thunderstorm activity flaring up from Colorado all the way into the Great Lakes here along that boundary, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin. Again, this is about when we'll be watching for that crucial rainfall in this corridor of eastern Nebraska into western Iowa. The front continues to sink off to the south as we head into Monday, so that Monday afternoon and evening, that best chance for thunderstorms is going to be from Colorado east into the eastern Corn Belt. Now, this will be when we get our chance for rain here in parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. It's going to be Monday into maybe Tuesday morning. Now, that front sinks off to the south and then kind of stalls across the central plains. And then we've got an advertised wave that comes in here Thursday and Friday across the high plains and then rides along this frontal boundary, bringing additional rain chances to this general corridor here. Now, we'll have to talk about the details as we get a little bit deeper into next week, but that is the signal here, and that could be, again, crucial and extremely beneficial for this region here as we talk about really increasing dryness over the last several weeks. I'll show you a map here that kind of reflects that. So total precipitation from the European model, again, I like when you can see the flow of the atmosphere, kind of the background state that's driving things. And watch as I hit play on the animated precipitation, you really can see the flow around that ridge of high pressure across the central U.S. Now, as we take it into Sunday afternoon and evening, we've talked about the precipitation between now and Sunday being the highest from Colorado into the Great Lakes. This is the region that will be benefiting from that frontal boundary as we head through the next 2.5 days. Now, it continues to sink off to the south then as we get into, here's the date up here, late Sunday, getting into Monday. Now we're getting into Kansas, northern Missouri, into northern Illinois as we get into Sunday night and Monday morning. The front continues off to the south. You can just see it almost like a squeegee here, making its way from north to south across the Corn Belt, bringing the rainfall chances with it. We're into Monday evening now, Tuesday, getting into Wednesday, and now we're getting into lower reliability, but you can start to see the impact of that frontal boundary potentially lingering across this region as we get into the end of next week. Now, instead of looking at the drought monitor map that came out yesterday, I know many of you have already seen that. We're looking at the drought monitor class change over the last month. So all the way back to the end of June, the last week of June to now the last week of July. And really, I want to point out where we've seen a degradation in our class here, where we've seen the drought get worse. And again, I was talking a lot about western Iowa into eastern Nebraska. And that's a region where we've really seen conditions worsen. You can see some green and some grays where we've stayed the same or gotten better. A lot of improvement here across portions of the northern plains. We've seen some improvement here in parts of the eastern Corn Belt, although the further east that you head, the drier things get. But if we can really start to dump some rain on this area from parts of the high plains into western Iowa here, that would be incredibly great news as we head into the early part of next week. So where's the best chance of picking up an inch or more of rainfall? From the European model, the ensemble on the left, the GFS ensemble over here on the right, where you see the orange and the red shading. Again, that's where we get into 70, 80, 90% chance of picking up that inch of rainfall. And we do see that advertised here as we get into parts of, again, eastern Nebraska into western Iowa. This is really where I'm going to be watching, especially as we get into late Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then potentially with that second wave as we get towards the end of next week. Now, as we take a look at temperatures, you see the cooler and less humid air trying to make its way in here across the Great Lakes and the eastern Corn Belt. It will do so for only about 48 hours before we see this heat across the central U.S. once again begin to expand into the region. So your high temperatures for the day today, low to mid 90s across the central U.S. As you head toward the Great Lakes and the eastern Corn Belt, you'll find 70s and 80s. Those are gone. The 70s are, at least, as we begin to climb back towards 90 in the eastern Corn Belt. Saturday and Sunday, we finally do so. There's your cold front, though, starting to make its way into the region, making its way all the way into the central plains and the eastern Corn Belt. As we get to Monday, we see those highs in the 70s and 80s behind the front, and then the impact of clouds and rainfall then keeping temperatures in the lower 80s all the way from the central plains into the eastern Corn Belt as we get to Tuesday afternoon. Have a great day, a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you again on Monday morning.